In 1865, the United States ratified the 13th Amendment. After the Civil War, millions of formerly enslaved people believed they had secured absolute freedom, but the authors included a deliberate condition. Right in the middle of the text prohibiting slavery is a specific carve-out, except as a punishment for crime. This meant if the state could convict you, they could legally force you to work for free. Slavery in America did not end in 1865. It mutated. The amendment created a legal trapdoor, allowing the exact same economic system of extraction to move behind prison walls. After the war, the Southern economy was shattered. Plantations and infrastructure required a massive free labor force to rebuild. Enter men like Joe Turner, Jr., a notorious enforcer in Mississippi who realized exactly how to exploit that new constitutional loophole. Turner and local governments weaponized black codes, specifically vagrancy laws. These local ordinances criminalized black men for everyday activities. You could be arrested simply for being unemployed or for standing on a street corner. This diagram outlines the trap. Once arrested for loitering, these men were hit with heavy court fines they couldn't pay. To clear the debt, the state leased them out to businessmen like Turner, who shipped them to work in coal mines. Turner provided a proof of concept. He demonstrated that by criminalizing a highly specific population, the state could generate an endless supply of free labor and corporate profit. The mechanism Joe Turner used in the 1880s did not vanish. It refined itself through decades of Jim Crow and the rise of the state-run penitentiary. By the 1980s, the legal infrastructure was set for a massive expansion, but it required a continuous supply of human inventory to sustain its new corporate form. In the 1980s, the U.S. government backed Nicaraguan Contra rebels to fight communism in Central America. As detailed in a 1989 Senate report, the CIA protected the drug supply lines run by these rebels, allowing cocaine to flood into American cities. Investigative journalists like Gary Webb, along with official government admissions, later exposed that federal officials intentionally ignored known traffickers to keep their foreign war funded. This chart shows the 100-to-1 sentencing ratio established by the 1986 Anti-Drug Abuse Act. If you were caught with 500 grams of powder cocaine, a drug associated with affluent white suburbs, you received a mandatory 5-year prison sentence. But it only took 5 grams of crack cocaine, predominantly found in urban communities of color, to trigger that same 5 years. The government prioritized geopolitical strategy in Central America over the social decay of American cities. While the CIA focused on funding a foreign war, domestic drug laws stood ready to sweep the resulting victims into a growing network of cells. Successive administrations built the legal framework to house this influx. Ronald Reagan eliminated federal parole, meaning an inmate served every day, and instituted rigid mandatory minimums that removed a judge's ability to show mercy. George H.W. Bush expanded this framework. He used televised addresses to frame drug use as a grave national threat and pressured states to adopt truth in sentencing laws, legally requiring inmates to serve at least 85% of their terms. Then Bill Clinton signed the 1994 crime bill. This legislation provided $9.7 billion in federal funding to physically construct the massive new concrete warehouses required to hold a skyrocketing inmate population. Across 3 presidencies, the core logic of the 13th Amendment loophole was aggressively scaled. What began as a localized exploitation tactic in Mississippi became a permanent, federally funded machine. With a guaranteed supply of bodies, incarceration became a highly lucrative global business. Large private prison corporations are now publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. These corporations operate on state contracts that pay a per diem, a daily cash rate for every individual inmate housed. Many of these contracts include strict occupancy quotas, legally requiring the state to keep the prison up to 100% full, even if crime drops. Compare that to today. During the 80s and 90s, the media labeled urban drug users super predators, justifying aggressive policing. But when the modern opioid crisis hit suburban communities, pharmaceutical companies spent billions soliciting doctors to overprescribe highly addictive pills with near impunity. The system criminalizes addiction when it supplies prison labor, but treats it as a disease when it generates dividends for the medical-industrial complex. Beyond the stock tickers and government contracts, this 160-year system leaves behind a trail of decimated households. Mandatory minimums and 3 strikes laws acted as modern man-catchers. They removed an entire generation of fathers from their homes, creating massive emotional and financial voids. This placed a crushing burden on the maternal blueprint. Single mothers were forced to work multiple low-wage jobs just to survive. With parents physically removed by the state or entirely consumed by the need to work, youth were left unprotected from the very lawyering and vagrancy traps set by police. This destabilization is highly strategic. It keeps communities politically weak and economically impoverished. Every absent parent guarantees a vulnerable child, ensuring a continuous supply of inventory for the prisons of tomorrow. To decouple profit from punishment, the foundation itself must change. We have to legally remove the exception clause from the 13th Amendment, ending the constitutional status of prisoners as slaves of the state. We must abolish for-profit incarceration and rip up occupancy quotas entirely. Without Wall Street dividends tied to full cells, the financial incentive for mass arrests disappears. Finally, states must redirect the billions spent on warehousing humans directly into community infrastructure. Instead of spending $40,000 a year to lock a father away, that money can fund business grants and support the maternal blueprint. The history of mass incarceration is a continuous line of exploitation. But a loophole is only a mechanism of the law, and what the law has opened, the public has